Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to Developing Your Talent and Culture in the New Normal webinar. And wishing everyone a happy Lunar New Year. And of course, because today is Ren Ri, so happy birthday, everyone. Now, before we get started, some quick house rules for your attention, please. Today's session will be recorded for SG Tech's own evaluation purpose. If you have any questions for our speakers later, please use the Zoom Q&A function below to type in your query, followed by your name and your company. This will be helpful for us and our team to do necessary follow-ups as well, so that we can support you in the best way possible. Thank you. Now we're just going to wait for maybe just a minute before we begin. But before that, we'll move on to the program so that you can get a good view of what you can expect for today's session. All right. And so, hello everyone again. My name is Shane, and I'm the co-founder of Growth Beans, a social enterprise that provides individuals and leaders with a safe space to connect with inner self, strengthen soft skills, and enhance well-being, especially in this new normal. I'm also a proud member of SG Tech's Singapore Enterprise Chapter's Executive Committee, and I'm happy to be here to support in hosting this session today. So on behalf of the Singapore Enterprise Chapter, I want to welcome you to the Developing Your Talent and Culture in the New Normal webinar. Well, the shortage of tech talent remains the biggest challenge for our industry. And that is why SG Tech has partnered the Tech Skills Accelerator, also known as the TESA initiative, that is led by IMDA to help tech employers, such as yourselves, better understand how they can overcome these challenges. Today's session is supported by the Singapore Enterprise Chapter, LinkedIn Singapore, Positive Performance Consulting, and Molewin Digital Holdings, and especially designed with SMEs like us in mind. We hope you find it useful. So to get the ball rolling, I'd like to invite everyone to participate in this quick poll, in this Mentimeter. So if I might invite all of you to take out either your mobile phones or just open a new tab on your laptops, go to menti.com and key in this code 6704914. There are two questions that we would like to ask you, invite you to respond. The first question is, what has or have been stressing you out in the last 3 months? And question 2 is, what are your talent and culture challenges in this new normal? So once again, we invite you to go to menti.com and key in the code 6704914. So we give all of you some time here to input your responses, and in a short while, we will share screen to share what everyone's responses are about. And if this And right now we have just shared our screen so that you can see everyone's responses as well. To see what have been stressing us out in the last 3 months. We can see that the biggest word here, because this is a word cloud, so the biggest word here will be the one that has the most responses. And I guess work, recruitment, project timeline seems to be the top 3 stresses. Okay. Having no real vacation, that's of course a real concern for us. We're finding the difference between work and life that's becoming an increasing challenge. recruitment not finding enough tech talents, and so on. Now let's also go on to see what are our talent and culture challenges in this new normal. Finding suitable candidates, industry shifts due to lack of options, personal interaction and learning through discussion, of course, longer working hours, difficulty showcasing understanding through virtual interviews, again, talent, hiring and retaining them, and how to engage them better in this work from home format. And some stigma, disconnection, no face-to-face bondings or personal interaction. And I guess that's why this webinar today will hopefully help to address some of the concerns that you might have, and we invite you later on to post some of the questions that you might have to our distinguished speakers for today, as they go on to share some of their own experience with dealing with talent and cultural challenges. So do keep your own inputs coming in through this Mentimeter, menti.com. The code is 6704914. And we can share this back with you much later. So over to the main screen. Well, thank you for your enthusiastic participation. Definitely, we do see some of the common themes that are happening. And right now, so that we can go into the main session soon to hear and get inspired on how to deal with our challenges, let us now invite Sharon, the chairperson of SG Tech SEC Executive Committee, for a welcome speech. Sharon, please.
Thank you, Shane. Good morning, everyone, and a happy Lunar New Year to every one of you. I'm excited to start the Year of the Ox with our HR series. Quick sharing about SG Tech and the organizing team for this event. SG Tech is a premium trade association for the tech industry in Singapore with close to 1,000 members, ranging from innovative startups, vibrant SMEs, to top MNCs that leverage tech as a core driver in their business. SG Tech has 6 chapters and 3 committees which advocate growth, collaboration, and address challenging issues together. The chapter I'm heading is the Singapore Enterprise Chapter, also known as SEC. So SEC aims to prioritize local and tech-enabled businesses to grow within and beyond Singapore. We set out to help local companies to strategize and evolve their capabilities by connecting with an ecosystem of like-minded entrepreneurs and resources for future success. And our Talent and Capabilities Committee developed intelligent tech competencies to address industry concerns and resources challenges. The HR series is one of the many efforts that SEC's strengthening pillar to aim to develop our ecosystem's capabilities. Working with the Talent and Capabilities Committee and IMDA's TESA, we co-organized this event for the community. Our aim is to bring in HR experts and companies with leading HR practices to share their tips and experiences. So prior to COVID, we have run 2 physical events with more than 100 attendees, and with the lockdown interruptions, we also continue to run a series of solution toolbox to continue our effort to share the HR practices and tools to better manage during the COVID pandemic. Our highlight is to share our HR series in our knowledge and building advisory clinics, where companies sign up to have more intimate sessions with our HR consultants to source out the various programs that can meet their needs. So due to the very small group, it is always filled up very quickly. And Edison will be sharing later on the upcoming advisory clinic, and we look forward to your participation. So in today's series, we will be sharing about how you can develop your talent and culture in the new normal with an exciting panel of speakers, followed by Q&A with them. I'll hand over to Shane now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Now, our first industry speaker for the day is Mr. Edward Chen, who will be sharing the topic, Developing the Talent and Culture in the New Normal. Edward leads the Singapore sales team for LinkedIn Talent and Learning Solution. His team helps companies leverage LinkedIn's insight, technology, and e-learning offerings to support talent management needs for business growth. Edward, please.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for all the participation, and I'm glad to be here. My name is Edward. I work with LinkedIn and then leading a team helping the companies to plan, hire, develop their talent using the LinkedIn platforms. I've been LinkedIn for 7 years, and we have the opportunity to work with different business leaders, HR leaders on how they're looking at the future of work in that sense. So today, I'm going to talk about developing talent and learning culture in the new normal. And there are 3 areas that I would like to cover. Number 1 is the trend we see in the market when we talk to the C-levels or HR leaders, and also what are the common challenges, especially in L&D, implementing e-learning. And then the third one is, what are some of the best practices or food for thoughts for you to think about or spark discussion internally? So, as a start, I still want to wish everybody a very happy Chinese New Year. I found this picture with an ox with a mask. I find it pretty cute. It's a very different Chinese New Year, and it's been different because of COVID, and it will be different because of COVID as well. Because we are now entering into a new normal, it's a brave new world. The other day I was talking to a CEO, and then he's talking about, hey, a lot of employees now come to me saying that, hey, boss, I'm not sure, am I working from home or am I sleeping at work? So that says a lot. The world is changing and everybody, including companies, individual contributors, managers, and leaders are coping and learning to deal with the new situations. So if we look back, in the beginning of COVID, the last Chinese New Year, as a company, we started to mobilize how we deal with the COVID, quickly make sure our employees are safe, and then quickly stabilize it by providing some tools, technology tools like Zooms, or even some e-learnings to make sure that they are engaged, or some of the so-called classroom training being canceled, but we sort of using e-learning to complement that. But now, as we're coming into the phase 3, after phase 3, we are in a strategized mode. A lot of companies start to realize, hey, this is going to stay for a longer term. And the future of work is now. How can we strategize? How can we adapt ourselves to have an edge and in the future of work? So when we talk to different CEOs, I think the common theme on them is always the speed of technological change, and most importantly, the availability of key skills. Not just the technical skills, but also the soft skill as well. Especially everybody is working from home. There are various kind of new skills pop up that need to be picked up and need to be picked up pretty soon. So while CEO is thinking about the skill shortage, the technological changes, the HR leaders is also now in the center stage to think about how to reimagine the world of work. Not just now, leading the employee today through the changes, but also preparing for the future. When we're talking about now, because everybody is working from home, just now in the work cloud, everybody say a lot of stress because of work, feel disconnected. The way of employee engagement has to be changed. Previously, there is a company that bring people together, but now it's a very dispersed network of employees. How can we bring them together? How can we rethink about employee engagement? And then digital upskilling is imperative, and how you convey your communication has to be different as well. Everybody is bombarded by email, but there are certain messages you want to emphasize. Is there a better way? Through virtual town hall, through small gathering or something? And of course, need to build an agile workforce. A lot of company in the stabilization stage, they are thinking about how to so-called realign their workforce, repurpose and optimize their workforce. They look at their skills needed now and the skills needed in the future. Is there a way to think about the build versus buy decision? And then the next one is thinking about the future. Like what I say, now everybody is working from home. There's no longer a physical office to bring people together. There's no more like Lohe can bring everybody together. There's a lot of restrictions. Then what does it mean to bring people together as a company? And a deeper level of thought is about your employer branding. What is it as a company that we can attract and retain talent. That's constantly on top of a lot of C-level or HR professionals' mind. And then how can we build a future of skills that is ready for our workforce and our environments, our business environment? And then data has never been more important for HR to make the right decisions. So recently we talked to some of the HR leaders. They highlighted 3 key trends that fueled by COVID. And then for somehow it sort of aligned very well in the beginning, the ice-breaking activities, the word cloud. Number 1 is the burnout risk, people feeling extremely stressful, and it's real. And company emphasize a lot on the mental well-being nowadays to their employees. And then internal hiring, because recruitment consistently become a challenge in the current climate. Companies start to look inwards. Is there some talent and skills that I can repurpose and that can fulfill the needs for my organization in the future? And then the third one, digital upskilling is imperative and will continuously be imperative. Those are the top key trend fueled by COVID. But again, there's no one single solutions or approach can address all of this. It requires different approach, multi-layers, or even different help from various stakeholders. So let's talk about employee burnout risk, which reached a 2-year high. I think from a LinkedIn perspective, or when we talk to different companies, they start to realize we really need to empower the frontline managers because they are closer to the frontline employees to make sure that they have the proper mindset and the skill set to help employee weather this storm, weather this difficult period. And then the internal hiring, a lot of talk about internal mobility to understand, hey, what kind of skill set I have, my skills inventory as an organization, and then what's the skills I needed now, and where's the gap? Is there a way that I can develop a learning opportunities for employee to grow within the company, not just fulfilling the hiring needs, but also make employee feel engaged. And the third one is digital upskilling. The skills shelf life, according to the report from World Economy Forum, is only 5 years. So that means that a lot of skills that exist now, but 5 years later, it will be obsolete. Thinking about social media, 5 years ago, social media skill for marketing, for marketer is still relatively new, but now it's super normal. And UI, UX, it wasn't there before, but now it's so common. So it's always changing. And from LinkedIn, we see a lot of posts every day, and we see a significant spike in terms of digital upskilling, virtual collaboration on the posts related to this topic that further emphasize that digital upskilling is real, is imperative. And for us, we also offer a lot of e-learning content. We also realize that during this period of time, certain skill sets, for example, developing virtual working skills or mental health skills are on a spike, it's skyrocketing. But it's good in a way that e-learning is now in the center stage, has the visibility for the organization because people has to use e-learning for somehow. But for L&D professionals, the challenges are still there. What are the challenges? Number one is about engaging the modern learners. Organizations has multi-generational workforce. Different people has different learning needs. Some people would love micro-learning, bite-sized learning. Some people like to sit there for 1 hour dedicated for learning. So how can you cater to that different learner expectations? And e-learning is more than just, I put the classroom learning content, put it online and make sure employees sit in front of a computer, sit through it, that's it. No, there's a lot more than that. How to engage the learner is the key. And at higher level, the challenges are how to transfer and where is the gap, and align that with the C-levels, the business leaders' strategic goals. So we can have desired behaviors and skill set to help to fuel the business growth. And of course, when we implement any learning and development initiative, it has to be scaled, it can be replicated, it can be moved very, very fast. So those are the common challenges we see in the L&D spaces. And every time when SME implement e-learnings, there's always naysayer in the organization, especially some of the learners. And I just listed out some of the common challenges. Number one is, hey, I'm already very busy. I don't have time to read through the video. I don't care about the content, but I just don't have time. So that's one. Maybe we need to think about micro-learning, bite-sized learning, or learning in the flow of work. Not enough guidance or directions, I don't know where to start. Or not enough recognition or reward. Not enough engagement through the learning process. And all the content is just here and there, too hard to find. So that's why when it comes to evaluating an e-learning platform, whether it's LinkedIn or other sources, we always recommend companies to think about various aspects. How to have a robust online learning platform that your employee will love, will use, and apply. So for example, content is the piece. How can we have a more quality content that's engaging enough for a user to find? And then the using experiences. Some people like to learn on their mobile devices. Some people like to listen instead of viewing. So how can we have like different approach to cater to different learning experiences? And the third one is how can we have the insight to understand what kind of skills is trending and what kind of course can complement those trending skills. So those are the key elements we would love company to think about when it comes to selecting e-learning providers. And in LinkedIn, we recently did a research with the HR leaders, L&D leaders in Southeast Asia, including SM Retail in Philippines, including Nets in Singapore. And then we kind of like understand they implement e-learning for a much longer period of time. They have the experiences, and we try to summarize those L&D leaders, more advanced thinkers. What are the consistent characteristics that help them implement the learning strategy and get the C-suite buy-in? So number one is they really see themselves as transformation leaders. L&D is more than just booking the classroom, inviting the speakers. They really get the airtime from their business leaders, C-levels, to understand where do they see the gap, where the organization is going, and how learning and development can help and inspire. So they are really constantly in the C-suite discussion. So for example, recently talking to a smaller IT firm, they are moving towards one single solution to a multiple solutions. And they really want their sales rep to have a more strategic thinking, more consultative sales. Then some behavior need to be changed. Need to talk to different stakeholders. We call it multi-threading in the organization in order to build the solutions. Need to know how to ask the right discovery question in order to build a solution portfolio. So those are the skill sets they are trying to build, working with the L&D professional through the e-learning initiative. And the third one, they are accomplished fundraisers. I know budget has always been a tricky topic, but most of the company, they perhaps pre-COVID had certain budget for classroom training, learning and development. Now it's really to think about how to redeploy that in another format, perhaps e-learning, and how to get the buy-in from the different business leader to gain their support. So that comes to the next point is about being an advocate, always on advocate. They are very, very eager to share with different stakeholders, learners, the benefit of learning and communicating the ROIs of learning and the value of L&D organization. Nowadays, they also recognize ROI does not really mean a direct, a very short, swift, direct impact on the bottom line. There is a long-term goal for that, and they find different ways to sort of prove the ROI. It could be through employee engagement score. It could be through different metrics of learning, learner engagement, and so on. So there are different ways to talk about ROI. And the fifth one, they are very passionate about implementation. They see this not just an L&D initiative, it's also an internal marketing initiative. How can I champion the culture of learning and leverage my stakeholder to help me amplify the message? So speaking of implementations, I think it's not that easy, but there are some tips and tricks that I would like to share if you would like to implement an L&D strategy. Putting learner engagement as the core of it, there are 4 M's you can consider. Number one, moments that matter. A lot of HR leaders now talking about learning in the flow of work. That means, for example, I'm a business leader, I'm a manager. I know that next month is a performance review month. There will be a lot of difficult conversation. Then maybe I can take some bite-sized course to help me equip with the right knowledge to structure those difficult conversations. So I have higher chances of success, get my message delivered, or coach the employees. So providing learning content at the right time, right moment, in an easier to absorb format is very important. Moments that matter. And the second one, manager involvement. Study shows that people are more willing to learn. In fact, more than half of the people who participate in the survey says that, hey, if my manager recommend me certain content, certain courses, I'm willing to spend more time on it. So manager involvement is definitely the key. And the third one, making the learning fun. We've seen companies do a lot of learning days or sort of learning festivals and celebrate those top learners. Those are the things you can think about, make learner feel engaged, make them feel recognized. And the second one, and the final one is about marketing. Treat it like an internal market campaign. Building learning culture takes time, but you have to start somewhere. So I'm at the end of my slides. I just want to say, when we work with different companies, big and small, we always like to tell them that, hey, building a learning culture is a journey, but you have to start somewhere, baby step or no step. So talk to us. If you want to find out more, you can reach out to me through email. We have a lot of good contents, best practices, and we can talk later. Thank you. So over to you, Shane.
Thank you very much, Edward, for the very insightful presentation and for highlighting like the 4 M's for engagement. That's something definitely that people, it's easy for us to remember and for us to start thinking about it to see how we can put some of this into implementation. Now, right, what's next is our next speaker, Mr. Kathirasan K, who is the founding partner of Positive Performance Consulting and leads the portfolios of organizational cultural transformation, leadership development, coaching, and mindfulness practices. Kathir brings with him over 25 years of industry experience and has worked with large corporations across the globe. I'll leave him to share more about the culture of engagement and continual learning. Kathir, please.
All right, thank you, Shane, for the introduction. So I'm very pleased to be here, to be sharing some information and insights around the culture of engagement and continual learning. I must also thank Edward for paving the way with great insights to what I'm going to share. So I believe many of us would be very interested about culture. And there is one big misconception whenever we talk about culture. Many of us tend to assume that whenever we talk about culture, it is something urgent. But to be very honest, building a culture is not something urgent, but rather very, very important. And as you know, usually the things that become urgent were once important. So therefore, this discussion is very important to all of us because right now we are in a particular stage of, I would say, human civilization where we are seeing COVID-19 as something that is unprecedented and something that we are struggling with. So this shows us the importance of culture, a culture that would be able to renew itself, a culture that is able to respond to challenges. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. And the many things that I'm going to talk about is actually insights and experiences that we have gathered, me and my colleagues, working with SMEs as well as MNCs. So I would not take this position that the experience and knowledge of one distinctive sector is greater than the other. In fact, there are so many things that we can learn from MNCs and there are so many things that we can learn from SMEs. The experiences are very different. The challenges could also be very different. So with those assumptions and with that preamble, let us now talk about the topic at hand. Now, the first thing that I would like to talk about is the current business landscape. Now, we know that all of us are perhaps operating in Singapore, and we need to look at what's happening right here, right now. So I would like to leverage on the survey results of the Singapore Business Federation 2020 and 2021, and the great insights that we can gather from the survey that they did recently. So you can see that a lot of local companies are reskilling and looking at their workforce capabilities. You can see some of this data. You can read this later as well. I'm not going to go through this in depth, but just some snapshots that we want to focus on. Now, the first thing that we can see is that the big impact is on the first is the number of employees. And I think many of us could be facing this challenge as well. Now, we could say that very likely the numbers in terms of headcount would remain the same for only 65% or so of the companies. Now, with other companies may see an increase and also a decline. So the number of employees, the employee headcount, now that could be a big impact. Now, the second thing that we need to look at is staff training. Now, you can see that some companies continue, most of the companies decide to continue on staff training. However, some companies would also decrease on staff training and some would increase. Now, we need to talk about the merits of training itself, and I'm going to talk a little about that, an aspect of ROI, which Edward touched upon earlier as well. And the third point that we need to talk about is employee salary and pay. Now, you can see that could be declined, could stay the same, or there could be an increase depending on which sector you're from or which kind of sectors are actually thriving in this challenging time. The second area that I would like to talk about is the challenges that we are facing. And I want to focus in on a few areas. The first one is competition. As some of you may know, we are in this difficult time, but some businesses are doing very well because it works for them. And some businesses are not doing well. So there is also competition in different types of industries and also competition within the industry as well. That's number one. Now, number two is employee attitude and productivity. Now, that is severely hampered, especially now that we are working from home. Now, working from home is something new for many of us. But for a lot of people who are working from home now, things are changing very rapidly. And perhaps now we are getting into a comfort zone, possibly. However, there is also a new trend that we can expect, which is working from home itself becoming a part of organizational culture, because many organizations are possibly discovering that staff can indeed be productive at home. So that would mean that there could be lots of savings that could be actually there if staff were to work from home, and the benefit as well could be actually enhanced. So there is a possibility of organizations thinking about even having part of their workforce to permanently work from home. Although this is not new to some organizations across the globe, but we could see an increase of this particular trend. But however, it doesn't come without its challenges. The other area that I'm going to talk about is hiring, the area of hiring. Now, applicants for jobs, now they need to actually enhance creativity and problem solving, which becomes a challenging skill, which in my experience, I see that pretty much in Singapore. Now, the skills of being creative, the skills of being, the ability to solve problems, now itself requires a separate set of soft skills. And also it requires what I call as even attitude. Now, because a lot of times we think that all skills can be independently developed, but however, we realize that certain types of skills also requires a predisposed attitude, now which can also be developed. So we need to also look at how is it that we can actually identify these attitudes as well as these skills. And the last point in this slide is about attracting and retaining younger workers, which is a big challenge because as you can see, the behavior and the personality of the younger workers could be quite different from the people who are hiring them or people who are leading them. So this itself can be a big challenge for many businesses. Now, the last slide in terms of data I'm going to talk about is this. So here you can see what kind of support is required for companies or businesses locally. Now, the area that I want to look at is, here you can see HR, basically human capital development. How can we strengthen HR capabilities to meet those challenges Now, that's what I'm going to touch on briefly in the next few slides. Now that we've looked at the current reality, the current landscape that we are in, now the next step is now to look at what is possibly solutions or even directions that we can take to solve these challenges. Now we call this, or I call this, a positive performance culture. Now, a lot of organizations across the globe, now we have a performance culture because we know exactly what we want. We know where we need to focus on, because the main goal that we have is primarily driven by the results that we create, which is primarily numbers. But that is a performance culture. But we also need to look at a different type of culture that can make our business more sustainable. And that is what I call as positive performance culture. So the word positive is very critical. So what do I mean by that? How can we then understand or wrap our minds and heads around what is positive performance culture? Now, the first attribute that we say is that it is profitable. Now, this is a very important component of any business, right? Profitability. So a positive performance culture is something that allows organizations to be profitable. In fact, sustainably profitable. That's number one. Number two, innovation. Now, the ability to innovate now needs to be part of the culture of an organization, kind of its DNA. Now, constantly innovating. Now, this becomes a big challenge for some businesses because we are usually in the business as usual mode, as we call it BAU. Now, when we are in the BAU mode, now we become very complacent. But before we know, there could be another competitor in that particular service or product. So innovation is very critical for a positive performance culture. Number three, adaptability. COVID-19 is a good example. Now, in this kind of environment, we should be able to adapt very quickly, not as a reaction, but as a response. I'm very deliberately using these two words, reactive and being responsive. Now here, adaptability means that we respond even in very difficult situations. Number four, competitive advantage. Now, how can we create a culture where we always have this competitive advantage? Number five, staff engagement. I think we are that's the one of the focal points of what I'm sharing. How can we increase engagement and even redefine engagement is something that we need to think about. And well-being at work, which is very, very critical, because a lot of times you can see that stress levels and anxiety levels are increasing within the current situation. Not that they were not there prior to COVID-19. Stress and anxiety have always been there in workplaces and organizations across the globe, but it has become more severe, especially now that we have COVID-19. I mean, it's here to stay. So now let's talk about what are maybe 5 things that we can think about that can allow us to create a positive performance culture in your organization. Now, number 1, now we need to see that when we talk about culture, it is not something that is completely intangible and not completely tangible. It's somewhere in between. And how do we know whether we have a culture? So culture is something which is a set of actually thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors that we have around all of these 5 components that you see, which is yourself, and then your peers, customer supply sense it, the direct reports also exude it, and so does your leaders. So a culture is something that is created by the interaction of the 5. So the word you here refers to every staff in your organization, everyone. Now, so the interaction between all of these 5 components actually creates a culture in an organization. Now, I spent about 18 years working with many service providers previously in my previous incarnations. And during those times, I remember very clearly service providers who made a difference. Now, the service providers who made a difference to the decision that I make whether I want to work with them depended on how pervasive their culture was. They exhibit the same attributes, they talk the same lingo, they come from the same space. Now, that's what I mean by culture. So we need a lot of cultural ambassadors in organizations. Number 2, now we are always approaching problems from a traditional mindset. Now, what do I mean by a traditional mindset? Not that traditional mindsets are bad, but we need to balance it with what we call as positive approaches as well. So let me talk about traditional approaches. Now, traditional approaches are primarily approaches where we look at what is a problem in an organization or what is a gap. I think many of you are very familiar with what with what we call as a gap analysis. We look at what is not there in an organization and then we try to fix it. Now, when we do that, what happens is we tend to ignore the things that are working very well in an organization. So that's the positive approach. If you look at this image, now you can see the missing puzzle. So many a time as leaders or as what I call as managers, we tend to look at what is not there, what is the problem, and let me fix it, let me fix it. So this fixing mindset that we have. Now, when we keep doing that, we tend to ignore the other aspects in your organization that are working very well. And that could be the reason why you are successful. So we need to also discover what is working well in your organization, and that's called a positive approach. Now, we need more of that to create a culture that you want. Number 3, transformation. Now, many of us think that training or learning is the way to transform ourselves. But to be very honest, a lot of times transformation doesn't happen in the training room. Transformation happens only when we actually spend our time practicing the skills. Now, this is a very important component. And I love the fact that Edward talked about the manager involvement in learning initiatives. Now, that's exactly what we need, and more of that, because whatever that is learned in a training room is not enough. We need the support of leaders and managers for the learner to actually practice it. Now, when we start doing that, that's when it becomes a habit and it becomes sustainable. And that is one of the critical factors that influence a positive performance culture. So it starts in a training room, maybe. It could be even in a virtual training room, but it doesn't end there because we tend to think that it ends there. No, that's a starting point. But we need to ensure that there is practice, and that is one aspect of ROI for training. Step 4, or action 4 that we can talk about, is appreciation. Now, a lot of times staff may feel that they're not appreciated. And the usual default mode that we have when it comes to appreciation is dollars, basically, because we think that financial rewards is the sole means to appreciate a staff. While there is, of course, a lot of truth in it, but we need to also look at the emotional aspect of staffs, the emotional dimension where staff feel appreciated. And I would like to specifically point one particular thing that is very much needed in these days, which is diversity and inclusivity. Because today our workforce is very diverse. We have people coming from different cultures, and people may have inherent biases against certain culture or certain kinds of behavior. And that doesn't promote diversity and doesn't promote inclusivity. So this is another dimension that we need to look at for having a positive performance culture. And lastly, we call this component co-create. Now, whenever we have a problem, we tend to think that the leaders or the board or the group of senior managers or directors in organizations are responsible for solving the problem. But actually, research is telling us that actually a best way to increase staff engagement is to co-create, meaning that the very problems that an organization is being confronted by could be solved or even ideated by the people of the organization. So we need to create a culture where staff can actually contribute to solutions and even lead some of these solution projects voluntarily. So this is a very critical part of actually creating a culture. So with this 5, of course, there are more than 5, but I think these 5 could be a very good starting point for creating the positive performance culture that you may want to consider having in your organization. And changing culture, as I've already said, it may not be urgent, but it is very important. But remember, if you're seeing problems right now, if you're sensing symptoms of that, that means that now it has become urgent, which would then mean that you need to start thinking about these things and see how we can create that culture. All right, so with that, I hope that this was helpful to you. I look forward to taking your questions in the panel session. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you so much, Katia, for that very inspiring sharing as well. And the good 5 tips that we can take to help us to start creating that culture to support like the entire learning in talent development. Next up, we have Mr. Edison Tan, Deputy Head of Capability and Capacity Development at SG Tech. Edison looks after SG Tech's key talent initiatives to strengthen the local talent ecosystem and address the manpower and skill shortage in the tech sector, especially for displaced workers, career switchers, and students. There are a multitude of government grants, programs, and schemes available to help SMEs with their manpower challenges. Edison, please help us navigate what's out there.
Thanks, Shane. Maybe before I start, I should just let you guys know I'm running quite a bad flu. So my voice sounds wonky. Please bear with me. And in case I'm not clear, feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A directly, and we will address them after this session. Okay, so now let me get started with the various TESA talent programs. As you know, there's a plethora of programs out there, some of which we work very closely with, and some of which we know they exist and they have been very helpful for various companies. Now, I'm just going to pick a few, right? And I'm just going to present them in a quick view. You see here, okay? Firstly, it's about there are few ways we can actually help, and we are structuring a few options. Now, I think what a lot of you guys mentioned, the problem is about recruitment, about hiring. But I think as what Katir as well as Edward has shared, it's very important to also look at developing people, right? And not just necessarily your own people. That's definitely important, and that's something you can do. But also then therefore look at potential other talent sources, right? And often the two problems comes up the most importantly. One is they don't have enough skills. Two is they don't have enough attitude, right? The attitude is not right. And the second one is a bit harder to fix, right? We have a solution and we have something we are helping address, and I'll share that later. But more importantly, if there's a skills mismatch, right? If there are programs that we can send them for that will match what your company is looking for, I think that's what we're trying to address here. And that's what some of the TESA programs I'll be sharing will address. Yeah. So in 4 frames, I'll be sharing this thing. The first will be building a tech team. The first of which is you may want to really start, by starting the building blocks. You may start with looking at trainees, right? You may start looking at, building and customize certain training for the people and get them on board. And through there, it can be a selection process. And secondly, you should also look at hiring and reskilling career switchers, right? These people may be coming from other industries, but they will have transferable skills, right? And skill sets and experience from perhaps the industry you're serving or the relevant corporate functions that you're working with. And the next one is also about training and maintaining tech skills, right? So a lot of you are asking, we do want to send people for technical training and ensure they're up to date, right? Are there any support for that? And I'll be sharing on that as well. And last but not least, it's also about young talent, right? You really need to build a talent pipeline, right? You need your company's growth, and you're looking at not only just hiring and onboarding experienced people, but also get people who go through with you the whole journey. So these are the 4 areas I'll be sharing in. And without further ado, let me just start with the first portion. And the first scheme I'll be sharing is a company-led training. That's essentially a program that allows you to hire, have a tech team, ICT professionals, or they can be mid-level hires, but with adjacent skills. But most importantly, it allows you to customize a structured training that's contextualized to what you need, right? IMDA will actually support you in trying to come up with the program, right? With the idea that you will be able to host more than what you actually will need to hire. For example, if you need 20, you can host, you need 10, you can host maybe 15 to 20 of them. And then through that, you will be able to then also act as a selection mechanism where you will figure out who are the best fit for you, right? And you give the opportunity to these people to not only learn about what is needed in the industry, but for you, the most importantly is what training you need for your company. So I think the contextualization part I believe is the most useful. And essentially, the purpose of the program is to ensure that you do equip these people with a certain competencies within the skills framework of ICT. And essentially, they should fit what your needs are. This can also be MA programs like Pre-Leaders, where you equip them with capabilities for digital leadership, right? And I think there's one common misconception of the program that needs to be a critical, huge company. I think it really depends on what you're looking for. And this program has worked out for certain SMEs. So I think if you are interested, please do indicate in the survey later. And then we will actually, and we will actually share with you how you can contact IMDA and have a conversation with them on this. The next program I'd like to share, right, is a bit more new, right? It's a program that you may have seen, I believe, in the second half of last year. And it's actually a collaboration with Google, right, called Skills Ignition SG. And essentially, right, it's a program that's looking for corporate hosts, right? What the program prepares is for trainees to come into two training pathways. One is the digital marketing and data analytics track, and two, the cloud technology track. Right, so in these two tracks, right, basically the trainees who should be local recent graduates or mid-career applicants, right, who are all unemployed, right, they are firstly going to go through 3 months of vocational training, which I'll share a bit later more. And then the idea is that throughout this whole period of time, the whole 9 months, you will be working with them. Of course, the 3 months they'll be going through training, and then there will be, there will be hosts on your side, and you then assign them relevant projects for them to do, and they get exposed to, and hopefully solve some of the issues that you're looking for here, right? So in both in digital marketing or cloud, right? So the benefit of the program essentially is that a lot of the things are centrally managed by Google, right? So all you need to worry about really is the remaining and ensuring there's a good host environment, right? And then there will be some basic costs, working out a stipend, as well as a small portion of the classroom training, right? The most of which is taken care of with the agency here involved, and all of it will be covered, well done with the Google's partners. So here's a good look at what are the job skills, as well as what roles you can potentially host them for, right? So in skills in digital marketing, you have things like CRM, data analytics, insights, right, strategy and trends, and the roles are all listed here. There are various marketing areas as well as customer experience or content strategy kind of stuff that these people can be expected to play. And then for the IT and cloud computing, for those of you who need such roles, there will be enterprise architecture and cloud computing in the mix, right? And I'll share the next slide about what exactly typically is covered within the first 3 months, right? So for digital marketing, actually, the whole process covers customer centricity, digital channels, and data analytics. But you also see on the bottom right, there are additional modules. And these modules are basically what Google has added, to help also provide soft skills and support for the person to actually become a more capable professional at the end of the day. Yep. That's for digital marketing. I won't go into the nitty-gritty. And cloud technology, this is it. I think, again, I'll invite you to indicate your interest once, at the end of the survey. So this for cloud technology, and essentially for IT and cloud computing, there will eventually be both the infrastructure side, the core services and scaling automation, as well as the design and processing of the Google Cloud infrastructure. Right, so essentially this whole program, 9 months, will then support this person, and through that you will play an important role. And if you need people of such roles, then do indicate. Yeah. Okay, so this is the first category if we talk about building your team, getting trainees in to support you. Then actually we were talking about career switchers as well, right? So these are people, an untapped pool of people, because you normally wouldn't hire them because I mentioned earlier they don't have the right skills, right? But actually they may have a promising both transferable skill set or as well a good attitude. So the question is, how can you actually get on these people without spending too much money to train them? And that's where the professional conversion program comes in, right? Essentially, it's a career conversion program that's supported by the government, right? And essentially, there are a few tracks that SGTech works with, but there are a lot of tracks, over 50 tracks at just on the ICT space, right? So few reasons why you should want to consider tapping on the PTP program. The first of which is that you want to consider building and bolstering your digital capabilities. So in some of this, it can be enterprise software capabilities like Salesforce and SAP that we're working with, as well as digital sales capabilities, right? That will help you drive digital transformation as well as growth for your business. Yeah, then I mentioned about the right talent, right? So essentially, at least you can put aside the fact that they don't have, for example, digital sales skills. They may not know how to engage in the online marketing channels, but this essentially will help you bolster that and cover that gap, right? And this idea is that there will also be professional training that goes along with that. And last but not least, I think some of you might also want to consider, hey, actually, I think all of these programs are very good. I also want to give back, right? Partly, it might be giving back, and partly, you might also want to consider, hey, we are supporting the reskilling of these local PMETs, And partly of it is a balance, right? You actually are looking for a balanced workforce and ensuring that you still have sufficient foreign manpower quota to balance out. So this program actually helps you in ensuring that even untrained local PMETs are able to help join your company, right? And then there will also be government funding and cost fee salary support. I will share later. Okay, so a bit more program benefits. I mentioned earlier, there will be up to 90% of cost fee grant and salary support. This is actually up to 45. This instead will be up to 45% over 12 months instead of 90% over 6 months, right? For those that are affected by the job growth incentive scheme recently, right, which actually supports you around 50% of salary, right, throughout these years when they are actually hired on board since September to February this year, September last year to February this year. Yeah. Okay. And I mentioned over here, right, in the slides when we do send you, there will be digital. You can click on these links to find out more on our website. And essentially, I'll be covering firstly the delivery mode of place and train. So these people will need to get hired by your company, right? And it'll be a full period of 6 months. Okay, yeah, so I mentioned they will be hired right before undergoing the training and take on the new job role, right? So essentially, this is an example of digital sales PCP, where essentially there's total of 1,000 over hours, right, over 6 months, and a lot of it will be structured training. I think this is the area where we won't really mince words. I think some of these trainings can be pretty intensive. And I think therefore the attitude that the people we're looking for and we are preparing for also are trying to be the people who will want to take on this challenge, right? And learn a new skill. Because at the end of 6 months, they're intended to play a full-fledged digital sales a role. And so that will be coupled, and that will only take on, a couple of months at max, right? Spread out, classroom and project mentoring. And there will also be self-directed learning where the learner or the trainee can actually do it on his own self-time, both e-learning, right? In quick test case, it's on LinkedIn Learning, as well as project implementation, where there will be a specific digital sales and marketing project that's contextualized to your company that you guys can try to work out, and so then figure out what is it that you can apply on for your company, right? And most importantly, is this on-the-job training. So naturally, you will need to assign that kind of relevant project where the person should work on, and that will take off bulk of the training hours within the 6 months. Okay, so maybe I'll just do a quick run through on eligibility criteria. I won't bore you with running through line by line. Essentially, there are certain criteria, but the criteria are kind of general, covering some certain principles. Number one, this person needs to be placed right in a full-time employment contract. It should be a normal job, right? The idea is just it's kind of bridging course, right? This 6 months, he will essentially be with you while he's learning the ropes. At the end of 6 months, he should be expected to play a role. But in the meantime, because of the salary support, you should give him a regular contract as if he's able to play the role, right? So therefore, the job needs to be directly related to the PCP. If you are doing, for example, digital sales, it needs to be digital sales and digital marketing included, for example, or it cannot be just, for example, operations only, right? Yeah. And for the eligibility criteria of PMETs, a few things to note is that this person should be hired for not more than 3 months. I.e., this should be kind of new hire, right? If a person that you want to send for training is kind of new, I think you can consider that, right? And the person should therefore not be linked to the company. Before that, it should be truly a new hire. And WSG has put in these rules just to ensure that there's no, abuse of this scheme. Okay, now we come to the most exciting part, which some of you might have seen also before, which is 70% is the standard support for both salary support as well as cost fee subsidies. The cost fee subsidies will be applied differently. Some training providers will require them to pay upfront 100% and then you reimburse 70%, or some of them will charge you 30% upfront, with the idea that this person needs to complete the full training. And there will be enhanced rate for those who are either SMEs in the case of cost fees, and then for salary support and cost fees for mature Singapore citizens, or for salary support as well as if they've not been employed for more than 6 months, there will be up to 90% monthly salary with a certain cap here mentioned. Yeah. So yeah, we mentioned this is the funding support, and essentially we do run it. So I think that's often a question also, moving on to the next slide, that what about I have exiting employees, right? No point for me, to make the person leave and hire someone new to play this role. But the problem is specific. The person is not able to play his role anymore, right? He's either being, the role is therefore not that important because of tech disruption, and maybe either you're closing out certain parts of the business, or your company is not longer going in that direction. So it can be business transformation, or there can be situations where due to automation and tech, right, that's actually required for you to redesign the whole job, right? So in that case, in those specific scenarios, you can actually send these existing PMATs in your companies for the PCP. Of course, it'll be shorter. It'll be 3 months process, and then therefore salary support will be 3 months. But essentially, the training remains the same. You can see from here, right? So this is an option for people who actually want, and genuinely the person you say, hey, the person will actually lose his job, right? Because I'm not able to support him more of this, right? And this program therefore still supports that career conversion goal in which that we're trying to do here, okay? And now you may ask me, what exactly is job redesign, right? Because yeah, I mean, redesign sounds cool, but what exactly means, right? And I think we have highlighted earlier that the skills that you need going forward are a bit different, right? Some of these employees may be with you for many years, and from the day when the tech was, or when there was no tech, right? I think what you can do is just incrementally add on more skills for this person, but sometimes it may require a shift of what the person is doing totally, right? So in this case, I'll just do a quick illustration here, where because of technological possibilities, the roles may be switched around, right? So actually, there is a scheme that we've recently been working with SNEF, the Singapore National Employers Federation, for a support for the job redesign under PSG, right? Some of you may be familiar with, where there's essentially support for you to engage pre-approved job redesign consultants to embark on a specific job JR project, right? And there's a certain funding that assists you. I'll share later, right? Because like I mentioned, a lot of time there's automation and robots, and process flows optimization will replace some of these many roles, right? So the project should essentially help with the job size enlargement or job value creation, as well as improve the job attractiveness. And actually, you'll be most excited here that actually with the latest funding update from Budget 2021, there's actually an enhanced funding of up to 80%, and kept at 30,000 per enterprise per UEN, up to 31st March 2022. Right? They can also tap on SFVC, right, to defray cost, and there will be this one-off credit that will be up to the 31st of March next year. Okay. So the rules are generally quite basic. The company should be registered and incorporated in Singapore. But most importantly, I think there should also be a kind of special rule here, is that there should be a company of a decent size. And over here, the rule is just minimum 3 local employees that should be Singapore or citizens or permanent residents at the point of application, right? And what we can share a lot about what the consultants can do, but I think we'll leave that for another session. And essentially, if you are interested, really, what you can do is to find out more. You can click on the link to find out who the consultants are. And you can also contact SNEF on this link to find out more. Okay, so I think that should help you in trying to figure out, if I really do need to shuffle my people around, right, what can I do with that? And then going back to the point of training, right, and upskilling of people, and more importantly, in the area of tech skills relevancy, right? So you might and might not have heard of SITREP Plus, right? So essentially, it's a program that does provide funding, kept at per course. And if you are inquiring about such courses, you may heard from established training providers already that they have, for both the certification and the short courses, there are actually such SITREP funding, and this application can be made through IMDA. So that's one of the very good schemes that TESA does support and really help develop, and make it the skills of this thing a lot more accessible to people who need it. Yep. Okay, so the last part I've come to is this area about young talents, right? So I think most of you who have been in our past talks, I think you might have already been engaging in various internships, but I'll run through this and I'll point out an interesting fact that we are running through. So the whole program is called Global Ready Talent Program, and the global portion is intended previously to give global exposure to these interns, right, and send them overseas. And you probably figured out in COVID-19 situation, this is pretty much not possible for the past year. And so there is allowance, right? But actually, ESG has actually, taken out a suggestion. Maybe considered, maybe they can actually support remote internships. So internships where they're actually based in Singapore, but they actually need to do the work, for example, supporting business functions or business operations, as well as talk and engage customers overseas virtually, right? And particularly in the area of Southeast Asia, India, and China. There will be additional funding as also provided besides the basic stipend support that's capped at 800 for polys and ITs or 1,000 for unis, right? If you still haven't heard of that, do get in touch with us. It's also much details can also be found on our website. Yeah, and you do need to know that there are three steps and phases to this, and because of it being a grant, right, there needs to be much due diligence. So you do need to submit you need to submit all the application, right, and get to phase 3, submit it before the start of the internship. Yeah, so it cannot be afterthought, and I think that's something you do need to take note when you're looking at such grant applications. Okay. And also, besides growing young talents, right, we are actually happy to share, right, that we have throughout over the years, and I think as many of you have actually joined us in our various student engagement activities we have done with the benefit of TESA, right, to help really many companies, and this is case the industry networking session, a career fair, right, where we did at One North area, and it actually helped, put together all our tech companies together with the students, right. We're still hoping that we have more opportunities to run such events in whichever scale, right, and can be virtual if there's a need to. We've already done some of that recently, and then also created learning journeys, right? So if some of you are willing to host students, right, I think feel free to let us know. I think there often are areas where we want to expose these students and also give them a glimpse to your industry. How is that working with you, right? And if a company visit might be not so safe now, we have done virtual sessions where there's also sharing about career opportunities in the area. Last but not least, we would like to share this initiative that we have been doing with TESA called techtalent.sg, right? Essentially, it's a portal, right? So you can go to the website after this, and there are various functionality, but what we're trying to do is to bridge this whole area in which employers looking specifically for in the tech industry or looking for tech talent can then be bridged with both career switchers or people interested in ICM careers. Right. So besides just the usual job board and being able to search and apply, right, from them, right, talents can actually help. You can actually look for the talents, right. The portal will also recommend you talent, both from a system point of view, or if the admins, the active will recommend you and you're in touch with us, we can recommend suitable talent for you. And there are options for people to actually follow your company, as well as you can favorite certain talents to kind of look at certain opportunities where you might not have opportunities for them right now, but in the future, when the opportunity arises, these people, you can offer a job to them. Right, and then the usual stuff of tracking applications as well as scheduling interviews. But more importantly, you can do it as a team, right? It does allow you to assign people, various people in the same team within your company, so that you can all access the same pool of application status. Yeah. Last but not least, there will also be events, both in the tech community as well as like career events, right? So you can sign up potentially for virtual interviews, which we will also be sharing with you guys. Yep, so this is a portal, right? If you're interested to get started right away, I think you can definitely create an account, right? And then do update your profile and get in touch with us if you do face any issues, right? I think we are honestly starting this off, right? We're getting already a lot of talent interested, and we are just trying to find them more opportunities. And this is one huge avenue where we think it can really help. Okay, I think I'm coming to almost the end. The last bit is the SGUJ initiative. Essentially, now SGTech has the capabilities, right, and to help direct job matching. So I just want to shout out for people who have not heard of this yet, that you can email any of your JDs, right, or what kind of requirements you are looking for to Nancy, who is our SGPM, our HRPM from SBF, seconded from SBF, who will then assist you with this job matching and hopefully looking for relevant JDs, relevant CVs that we can then send over to you. Yeah, so maybe a quick summary on what SGTech has come out to do, right? We, number one, do help facilitate the job matching we mentioned. Since with various grant applications, particularly for GRT and PCP, we are directly helping with you. And also more importantly, I think over here we just share, there are some success stories profile on the newspaper. So there are opportunities where we do want to showcase and want to share the good news that you guys are, those of you who have been through the journey with us, as well as even in the, on the bottom left, you do see there are opportunities where we do have engagements with Minister, and actually then gather more feedback and find better ways in which we can, improve on the scheme, get the feedback, and then find how additional way you can support your companies. Okay, coming up to the last upcoming events, right? Two things. One, the career support group. This is the event that I was alluding to just now when I said that people actually have attitudes that they find struggle to meet. So essentially, sometimes people are not wanting to fit into a company. It's really just about them not realizing what they need to have a figure out in a new industry. So the career support group really hope to achieve that. And we really hope that you can join us, therefore, as a speaker, to just really share more about what your company sees and how they can most be able to add value, what they can learn, what they can pick up, what are you all looking out for, right? And if you're interested, do then therefore click on this link. And with the slide that we'll share with you, you can then access this link for us to really find out more on what you're looking for. And then, what are the areas that you think would help in this area. And the other thing that I think Sharon might have suggested was that we have an upcoming advisory clinic in March, and it's a smaller group, but essentially we will dive deeper, and some of these questions that you have a bit more complex. We may have certain topics that if you guys are interested in, we will get a consultant to come and help to address, and do sign up, and we'll figure out if some of these things we can extend that to you. The link is here. You can scan the QR code here. Okay, so I've come to the end of my presentation, but I just want to leave you off with this quick contact. We will fresh up later again for the scheme that you want to contact. And then, I think we are almost quite late. So let's just jump straight back to Shane. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jason, for that sharing. Definitely lots of different initiatives that we can get hold of and try to support our own organization with all these changes. Now, let us move on to the panel discussion so that we can bring in our speakers so far, as well as a special guest who I'll introduce in a short while, to this panel discussion so that we can ask our different questions and also have our speakers and panel respond to us live. So as a special guest on our panel, apart from the speakers you have seen today, we have Mr. Yuan-Teng Tan from Moorwind Digital Holdings. So Yuan-Teng is an advocate for the technology revolution, especially in Asia. He's passionate to train talents and has had interesting L&D experiences in his company. So let us hear from our panelists. And any one of you, if you have any questions, please put in your questions in the Q&A and we will pick them up. If there are questions, we're not able to answer them within this session, then we will definitely reach out to you as a follow-up. So please do put in like your name as well as your company name so that we can follow up with you later on after the session. So I guess to kickstart today's session, I already see some of these questions coming in. One of the first question, we'll probably like to direct it to Katya, because there's a question on your positive performance culture. Are there any views and advice on how do we raise awareness on the gaps through the approach you have shared? Because some employees are too caught up to reflect or take ownership of self-improvement to keep up with the culture needed in an organization. So Katya, if you can share more, please.
Right. I'll make this very quick given the time that we have. So the first thing that we do in this approach is not to assume the solution, because unless we know the problem, there isn't a solution. So we need to understand the problem a little more deeply before we can see how we can get there to find a solution that would work, that would possibly work for an organization. Now, the second thing is, usually when you want to create a culture like this, it starts with the leaders. So we need to, the first thing we need to do is to first work with the leaders and managers and directors of all the people managers in the organization to see how we can create this culture through coaching sessions, conversations, or even initiatives that revolve around policy making in the area of human capital, HCM and HR. So this is how you can do it. This is my short answer to that question.
Thank you, Katya. At the same time, I'm also going to check in with like Edward, right? From your own experience with LinkedIn and speaking to different people. Would you have any own thoughts on this particular question?
I think pretty much aligned to what Katya shared. I think asking why and then alignment with the managers, people, leaders is extremely important in terms of building the culture, and then empower your frontline managers because they are closer to the ground. Thank you.
Thanks, Edward. Yuan-Teng, is this your own experience since as CEO of your own organization? How do you actually handle this?
I think from my
company?
on our end, typically it's kind of challenging sometimes, I think, but then from a small company setup like us. But yes, thanks again for that question. And I think from our end, at executional end, we try to balance it well. I think managers are important. At a more flat structure like ours, I really depend on direct communications and actually helping them and actually working together to achieve their goals. And I think a lot of what Katia and actually Edward mentioned earlier on was really good advice, and we're actually using it and actually build on our own HR practices or talent development practices to actually enable that. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I'm going to ask you the next question as well, Yenten, because one of the things that was raised in the earlier quick poll, right, was about like how do you engage and motivate employees, especially during the work from home context. Especially, it's so difficult to interact with each other. So, in your own company, how do you motivate and engage employees in the startup with limited budget for activities?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Like again, for a smaller setup like ours, we try to actually be innovative or creative in a way. But I think I was quite happy that I was trying to follow. I think Katia actually mentioned a bit about co-creation. So one of the key things that I think where we work, besides the daily bread and butter work, we also try to be more innovative. So to bring in projects, like for example, last year we actually did some projects that was quite interesting. That was actually initiated by one of the GRT programs interns that we actually engaged on. To work on, we are a MarTech company, by the way. We are Moen Digital is a marketing technology company. However, we actually use part of our conversational AI for marketing, instead actually using it on a contactless leave project that one of our interns actually initiated. Actually, we work on the project and actually we got quite good feedback on that. And actually we're working on a prototype with Hitachi Elevators right now. So I mean, these are some examples of projects that we actually co-create or work with different various teams. So apart from the usual work that they are doing, like I mentioned, we actually scheduled like 20 or 30%, which much more last year because it's more quiet. But then this year onwards, what we're actually planning is at least 20 or 30% of time committed to a special project that our team can actually initiate and actually take the lead, or we will support them as part of their baby project to actually work together on those kind of projects as well. Yeah.
Sounds exactly like what implementing what Katia was sharing about.
Yeah, I didn't know. So I was working along his directions as well. Thanks, Katia.
And also what Edward was just sharing about how it's important to get your managers empowered to do this. Edward, on your own end, would you be able to share more about like how can we motivate and engage our employees? One of the other questions that came up because on this especially is because how do you support the talent modern employees today, right, with their demand and aspirations, when sometimes the existing business cannot do that?
Well, I think a couple of things here. The employee engagement, there is a need to rethink about how we evaluate or do a pulse check, because employee engagement previously we do it probably once a year or once every 2 years with like 50 long questions and people kind of like survey fatigue. But now, because moving to COVID, moving to work from home, there is really a genuine need to do a more frequent short pulse check. So managers, leaders can quickly know a sense of, okay, what's going on, what are they aspiring for? And then again, coming back to what I mentioned, empowering the manager to have the right conversation. So if, let's say, certain employees have certain aspiration, is there some internal resources through internal mobility or the new project being created, like what Yenten shared, to foster that positive communication? So it all starts with the pulse check, and it has to be changed. It's no longer those once a year, once every 2 year kind of frequency.
Shane, can I also add something?
Yes.
To what Edward has just shared?
Yes, go on.
Yeah, so sure. Okay, so I think it's very important. I think what is it where we look at a pulse check, and maybe for smaller companies, I think what we've also heard is that it's important for the managers itself, your frontline managers, to be empowered to do the engagement directly. I think it's important for them to have that one-on-one connection, because now we are so much more diverse. Often we are remote working, so there's a lack of relationship building, and engagement really needs to go from that within. Right, a personal check-in, because we no longer see each other in offices, right? You don't see the whole other teams. I think that is one thing, and maybe you do therefore need to empower, not just and give them the right skills and guidance, and really make it a key mantra in your company to ensure that your middle managers are really helping to pull the entire and engage your employees together.
Can I add something as well? I think on that part, from what we noticed as well, is that purpose become very important. So I myself actually lead the Singapore lead for initiative called Business with Purpose here in Singapore. And then what I found out is that actually with all that, those kind of projects that we are doing with regards to purpose, I think younger talent or talent these days would also be keen to contribute in that part of sense. So I think your SDG goals from a company perspective, even for a small company like us, is actually very important. And actually it becomes something that will be centric around what your team will be actually able to contribute to, not only from a company commercial perspective, but also other things that they know that the company is actually working towards something with purpose, or learning something along sustainability and purpose becomes very important as well.
Indeed. On our end, we run a lot like Find Your Ikigai workshops, right, for youth, and I think purpose keeps coming up. So when you look for like companies they want to go towards, they look at purpose-driven organizations. So that's so important. And that brings us, I guess, to that question, because Katya, you pointed out something about, employees wanted to be able to hire like younger talent, for example. So that brings us to the question of how do we actually attract good talent? So maybe Katya, you can start.
So this is a very interesting question, because sometimes people come to us and tell me, I want to increase levels of engagement. And the question I ask usually is why? Why do you want higher engagement? So that leads us to the question of purpose. Now you're not increasing levels of engagement for the sake of increasing levels of engagement. We are increasing levels of engagement to achieve a particular goal or set of goals. So the purpose has to be very clear, as what Yenton is already doing, and also Edward alluded to. So we need to know the why. Why are we doing this? And that leads us to what I call as your organizational DNA or your culture. Now, once you know that, when that is very clear to you, and I can articulate it implicitly and explicitly, I need to do it even implicitly. In fact, there is more power in implicit communication than explicit communication, because we need to walk the talk. When that happens, organizations become very desirable to the new generation. The younger workforce, as you have rightfully pointed out, is looking for purpose. I call it purposeful alignment with who they are and with the organizations that actually allow them to manifest who they are and what they want to accomplish. And for that to happen, we need to ask the question, the people behind these initiatives of increasing levels of engagement, L&D, coming up with policies, why are you doing what you're doing? If you know that very clearly, then everything you do would be aligned to the goal that you are seeking.
Thank you, Katya. And then if we look at it apart from the culture, we look at it from the other perspective of like HR tools that can support us with attracting talent, or even going through the process of interviewing, right? Maybe Edward, you can share more on that.
Yeah, I think with the advancement of technologies, data and insight, there are a lot of tools. But I think before we talk about the tools, I still want to emphasize that HR now really need to see ourselves or themselves differently. We are now in the center stage because of all this COVID. So really need to have that conversation with the business leaders, CEOs, to talk about how can we plan, hire, develop, and engage differently using technology. And then I think insights also plays a big part, where, for example, just now a question being highlighted about difficulties in terms of recruitment, then that itself, talent shortage is real, it's there, but there could be different workaround. We talk about buying a talent or versus building a talent from within, but do we have the insight to think about what are the critical skill sets and what are the skills that can be built? And when it comes to attracting talent, instead of fighting talent with Google, Facebook, those big company tech talent, are we able to find some hidden gems? And then that can resonate with our own employer branding. So I think data also plays a part as a tool to help HR to have that holistic conversation with the C-levels.
Thank you, Edward. And I'm going to throw the question to Yenton as well. How do you attract talent, or like especially tech talent, if you have any tech talent? You're on mute at the moment, Yenton.
Yeah, thanks, Shane, for the question. I think that part of what we are actually doing here right now is that we focus a lot on how we can leverage on certain free tools. I think as an SME, the accessibility to more technology here is actually quite massive. We also go on the My Careers program on IMDA and ESG initiative for recruiting. Although there's more stuff that we can actually do much there in terms of the data collection, but I think in terms of accessibility to more tools, HR tools, there are tools out there. I would be happy to share from SME perspective. I myself like to stack up technology tools that are free, but you probably have to integrate them at a level. So we actually tap on all these free learning tools. I think LinkedIn is a very useful platform. Sometimes what I share with my team members is also, instead of asking them to search on Google as well, I think I tell them to search on LinkedIn, which might be more focused in the area that I want them to be trained in, some white papers that I want them to read. I think there are actually a lot of tools and resources out there that we can keep tap on. I think it's more of consolidating it internally, especially maybe for ourselves, we don't really have somebody that's really focused on HR. But on my end, I try to document what as we are actually doing projects and stuff like that, onboarding, etc. The workflows, we try to document it more effectively. So there's something maybe from an engineer perspective, I like to share with people, document your processes, do it properly. Then you will be able to set up certain processes that I believe that some of our new team members, they feel that actually that it's kind of the workflow. They also feel that the culture is good, even though it's a startup. And the other part that I'm not so sure whether it leads on to the next question, Shane, is also how do we actually compete with the larger organizations? I think in terms of these tools and workflows, it is definitely a disadvantage. But then we also see that, with our, for example, the area that we're in from a marketing, our perspective, how we position ourselves as a technology enabler, how do we differentiate is also very important in terms of how do we actually share with the talent that we really want to recruit. Technical wise, I think our area, fortunately, is not too technical. However, having said that, it's also a disadvantage for us where we're actually looking for the people that we're looking at or wanted to employ doesn't exist in this particular market. So it's really an open opportunity for a lot of people. I think in the area of marketing, I think a lot of people are interested. That's where actually we are fortunate enough to attract certain group of people where maybe such opportunities or learning experience might not be available at the bigger organizations that we work with as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. Now, one interesting question has come up is, what is mindfulness? Does it help to reduce stress and anxiety? So, Katya, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, no problem at all. So mindfulness is a type of awareness practice. Sometimes it is also called meditation as well. But mindfulness is quite different from the traditional types of meditation. So it helps in two specific areas. The first one is well-being. So that includes stress reduction, reduction of anxiety, and also preventing depression. Now, the other area that we see evidence in mindfulness training is the increase in productivity levels without the stress. So people who practice mindfulness tend to be more productive in what they do because they're more self-awareness levels. They know what they want to do. They become more intentional, more purposeful without the stress. So these are the two broad outcomes of mindfulness: well-being as well as increase in productivity levels and performance.
Thank you, Katya. Well, in the essence of time, we're going to go into the last two questions. And the rest of the questions, if we have not been able to answer you right now, we will actually follow up with you. So one of the key questions here is, how do we convince less progressive SME owners on the ROI in terms of upskilling and redesigning their current workforce job scope? I'm going to open this to all the panelists. Anyone who would like to jump in first?
I can start first. I think ROI is always a tricky 3 words. It's always good to ask your boss, what's the definition of ROI first before you try to answer that. And I think a lot of data research already showed the benefit of learning, how that impacts organization well-being, engagement. So there must be a long-term view on that. And there is a genuine need, especially we're entering into this new norm. So my suggestion is really have that conversation. Then let's determine what's the right ROI. Is there a desired behavior change that we are looking at as a result of this learning progress? And obviously there are other metrics, employee satisfaction and so on, we can look at, but have that conversation and have a proper definition first.
Thank you, Edward, for having that conversation on ROI. What does that mean? It's important. Yenton, Katia, Edison, do you have any other thoughts or inputs on this one?
My thoughts on this is that I think maybe not in the HR perspective. I think in an area that I work with, some of the SMEs, or we try to enable them with certain technology in terms of the marketing aspect, but I maybe will be able to transcend that into a HR perspective. I think in terms of the ROI, like what Evan mentioned, it differs greatly from organizations to organizations. But on the whole, I think it's really showing them the returns of investment first. So meaning to say, I think a lot of tools out there, or be it digital or not, it's really about showing them progressively what is the effectiveness for traditional business owners, or I've been running this business for over 20 years or 30 years. This has been the way they are doing things, maybe from a HR perspective, and then they will realize that, hey, I don't mind going into this. I don't mind trying it out, but does it really give me the return of investment? But having said that, the return of investments definition is that I think at the end of all business, does it ensure that your business is running more smoothly? Probably. I think at an SME level, it's really down to the dollar and cents. Does it really make me money? When the money that I invest in, for example, at the end of the day, does it really give me that return on investment? Although, from non-monetary functions of the business, it might not be so direct, but you have to show them some numbers. So I think in terms of data these days, which is more accessible, I think this is really important. I feel that I'm using my experience from a marketing perspective to convince SMEs, is that when they actually engage on certain tools that we actually encourage them to go on, data becomes a very important thing. And when they see the data, I just use a simple example. I was on Google My Business. I was just as simple as creating a Google My Business page, showing a lot of SMEs, I'm talking about brick and mortar stores, they're saying that, hey, you actually start to have traffic. People are searching for you online, which they never realized all their whole career life. And when they actually look at the data, they will realize that, hey, yeah, it's actually something that means that there's a result over here. I think data becomes a very important thing. Of course, I'm not a pro dashboarding guy. So I mean, when we talk about data, people start to think about dashboard. But I think in terms of simplifying the information, capturing the information, and presenting the information to SME owners, especially from a HR function, becomes very important. Again, I think they are really specific. I'm not the HR specialist here. In terms of the metrics that you want to show them and things like that, I think it differs from business to businesses as well. But I think that becomes very important. Yeah.
Can I add something? I echo what Yenton just said. I think two things here. I think having that data or even report to show some insights to your management, that's definitely the key. And the second one is when we work with a lot of SMEs, definitely understand the budget constraint and so on. So that's why they like to take baby steps first, maybe a smaller scale, build up the business case, and with the leaders involved, and they see it in action, then they have in a better position to expand it to a company-wide initiatives.
I'll actually give a non-answer. I think, I mean, some of you may say, okay, I mean, if I'm on board these grants, I can tell people, I can tell my bosses that, hey, we get this money back, right? So actually that's part of the ROI. I would say that's actually a non-answer, because at the end of the day, it's still cost. If there's no purpose of you getting this person on board just for the sake of the grant, I think ultimately the grants are usually designed for you to have part of the cost bearing in it. Most importantly, you need to see that value, right? The cost of the grant is intended to bridge that gap in which you are, during a period of time when it's a harder pitch for you to do. It'll help you with the struggles. And then on that, you really need to see the ROI for yourself. And I think we must know that not every single hire will work out, not every single training may work out. I think like just any other business deal, there will be certain risks, right? And then there will be PTP people where the people may want to drop out. But I think this is in the face of, that's just really how business works. And same for people and hiring. The culture needs to fit, right? And so that, I think, is all we're just learning in the process of trying to get people to work together and contribute to the business.
Thank you. I think Katia, you wanted to add a point.
I just wanted to share one quick perspective, which is a little more back to basics, meaning that we tend to look at learning as an event instead of looking at it as a journey. So I think that shift in perspective is required when we look at L&D and all kinds of learning initiatives, because we need to couch and position learning as something that is natural to the human being and not something that we do as an event, because we are learning all the time. There is functional learning and there's a type of learning that benefits me as a person. if we can bring these two worlds together, then learning becomes very exciting because it's natural to who I am. Yeah, that's a back to basics kind of perspective to learning.
Indeed. Thank you, Katia. Well, I guess let us to wrap up this session. I'm going to use one of the questions that someone has actually posted, right? It says many times SMEs or smaller organizations are stretched, maintaining oversight on the business. So I guess as the parting words for today to wrap up today's session, what are your advice in terms of like what are some first steps that these SMEs can take to address the theme of today's session? So perhaps Yenchen, you want to go first?
Okay, I think on my end, I think it's really to try it out. I think there's nothing to lose, especially from an SME perspective, I guess. Is to take baby steps, like Edward mentioned. You don't need to be too ambitious or to be, inundated by all the tools or all the jargon out there. I think technology is important, even as a technology advocate. But I think, taking all this technology aside is really your business goals, and take baby steps. You might not, but just try. I mean, these days, there's no harm trying, no that much of cost to try. I think with the government support, with all these things, is really trying it out rather than sitting there and thinking that there's so many problems, or, start to think, oh, yes, I can recruit this, I can actually put them to training, but does it work? Try it out. The data speaks for itself. Once you start to have, send people through, you get your data and seeing that, hey, yeah, it works, or it doesn't work, I need to try something else. I think this is a trial and error process. And even for myself, that I said, I'm always not that pro HR or not that HR specialist, but I've been trying to take baby steps towards that path, that maybe there's something that I can be doing, and I can start off like start to recruit these interns to train them in this aspect, start to send my staff for certain form of training that probably in the past that I might not think that they will be suitable, or if it is useful at the start, but why not, let them to retrain in this particular perspective. The things that they might be learning might be also different, I think, when they come back. I think there's a lot of things that I think will be useful from my own experience, or my own HR or talent development journey that I've come through over the last year. Of course, thanks to the help of Agitech, that I actually embarked on this journey. So I think this, like, to try it out, take baby steps, try it out one at a time, and I think definitely you will gain certain things and learn more things from there.
Thank you, Yenchen. Edward?
Yeah, for me, it's really to have asked the SMEs and HR leaders to think about, under the current COVID circumstances, and your understanding about where the industry is going, having that conversation to think about how can we leverage technology to do something different in planning, hiring, developing, and engaging your talent. And again, take the baby step, or no step forever.
Thank you. Katia?
I would say that I would urge decision makers, leaders, and influencers in the room to do just this one thing. Right after this webinar, don't forget to have your lunch. And right after that, take a look at your calendar and ask yourself, have you placed time and for looking at what you need for the future, instead of setting time to do what is required right now. So what I mean is, look at your calendar and ask yourself, have you set aside time to think about your long-term goals? And think about using that time to process what we discussed today. And that would be a great first step for you to realizing your goals.
Thanks, Katia. I'll just jump in just to say, if you want next immediate steps, I think definitely have the reflection, like what Katia said, take small, simple steps. And I think more importantly, if you have any questions, with all the schemes that you're really lost with, do just drop us a contact. Look us out. You can find me at edison@agitech.org, or we'll share the slides as well as the contacts later. Just buzz us. We will help you maybe navigate some of the suite of the initiatives that there are. Thanks everyone for joining us also.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your great insights. Definitely lots of food for thought and things for us to reflect upon. And to everyone who's listening in today, thank you once again for being part of the session and the webinar today, and for being so interactive and great audience. Now, we'd like to invite you to fill in the survey form here to help us follow up with you, and so that we can also do better for our future events. Once again, for those of you who have input your questions but have not received a response from us, we will follow up with you. And as shared by Edison, Agitech has a series of events coming up next month So please feel free to indicate your interest for this event and also any particular scheme or programs you are interested in. A big thank you once again to all the speakers for their support. Everyone, have a great day ahead. Thank you.